What if some of the most powerful leadership lessons out there weren't from some modern business book, but from a really ancient story? In this explainer, we're diving into what we're calling the Exodus Playbook, a truly timeless guide for leading through difficult change when the stakes couldn't be higher and the path ahead is anything but certain.
This is the core challenge for all of us, isn't it? I mean, whether you're trying to pivot a startup, reform a nonprofit, or steer a giant corporation, you are absolutely going to face this exact kind of resistance. But what if there was a map for this territory? Well, our source material offers exactly that. So, where does a journey like this actually begin? The source we're looking at argues that true leadership doesn't start with a promotion or some big grand vision. Nope. It starts in a much quieter, more personal, and honestly, a much more uncomfortable place.
Just think about it for a second. There's a world of difference between wanting to be the boss and seeing a problem that you just can't ignore anymore. One seeks a title, influence, recognition. The other seeks a solution. And that right there is the critical distinction the source material kicks off with.
So yeah, that feeling, that little nagging voice that says, this just isn't right, that's the spark. But here's the warning. A burden without discipline and wisdom is just a recipe for burnout. The real question is, how do you turn that frustration into focused, sustainable action?
And what's really interesting is that feeling completely unready might actually be a good sign. The source suggests that, kind of like Moses in the story, the best leaders often start out feeling reluctant. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you actually understand the true weight of the responsibility. Okay, so once you accept that burden, the journey inevitably moves outward. And that is when things get really, really challenging. Because let's be real, it almost always means you're going to have to confront something or someone.
Look, powerful systems don't just roll over and give up easily. Confronting the status quo is necessary, but here's the real trap. You can't defeat a toxic system by becoming toxic yourself. The goal isn't just to change out the players, it's to change the entire game.
And then, it happens. The moment of truth. What the source calls your Red Sea moment. You've got the past chasing you down. The future is this terrifying, unknown ocean. And everybody, literally everybody, is looking right at you. So, what do you do? In that moment of pure crisis, your team isn't actually looking for a perfect 10-point plan. Nope. They're looking for a steady hand. The source argues your composure is contagious, for better or for worse, and it sets the tone for absolutely everyone else. Okay, so how do you actually generate that calm? Well, it's not magic. It's about having a simple protocol. First, you just pause. Don't react. Then, you assess what's really going on. You communicate clearly. And only then, you decide. It's a tool to turn that panic into focused progress.
All right, so getting through that first big crisis, that's one thing. But now we get into the long, hard slog, the messy middle. This is where most big changes just fall apart. And honestly, it's where the deepest leadership lessons are learned.
Let's just be brutally honest for a second, because the source material really is. The very people you are trying to help will often be the ones who resist you the most. So if you're leading for applause, well, you are going to be deeply disappointed.
It's this strange thing our brains do. When we're under a lot of pressure, we start to miss the good old days, even if they weren't all that good to begin with. We prefer the devil we know. The source has a great name for this: familiar bondage. That's when we choose a comfortable dysfunction over an uncertain but better future. And this right here, this is such a critical insight. It is not enough to get people out of a bad system. You also have to get the bad system out of the people. And that means you have to be intentional about building new habits, new skills, and a whole new way of thinking. So, this final phase of the journey is all about shifting gears, moving from just managing crises to actually building a culture. We're moving beyond survival mode and into building something that can really thrive, for the long haul. So many leaders think that structure and rules, that they just kill creativity, that they're just bureaucracy. But what's fascinating here is that the source argues the complete opposite. When everything around you is pure chaos, having clear roles and processes, that's not red tape, it's a mercy. It's a lifeline that protects people from confusion. And a huge part of that structure is learning to get out of the way. Your job isn't to be the hero who swoops in and does everything. No, it's to build a team of heroes. That's how you create a system that's truly resilient, one that doesn't just depend on you to succeed. So when you put all these pieces together, what do you get? Well, you get a repeatable 10-point playbook for leading real change. It's a journey that starts with a deeply personal burden and ends with a resilient, thriving culture. But let me tell you, it is not a straight line, and it is definitely not easy.
And that brings us to the final and maybe the most important lesson of all. Real change takes way longer than any of us want it to. There are going to be setbacks. There will be complaints. But your steady, consistent presence, it's like the sun and rain for a garden. It's what allows deep, real change to actually take root and grow over time.
So what's the big idea we should all walk away with here? Leading change isn't some one-and-done event. It is a long-term commitment. So the question for you is, where does your journey, your team, your community need your steady, committed presence the most? Right now. Where can you show up and make a difference, not just for today, but for the long haul?